Okay, so we are now being recorded. If you don't like it, go ahead and hop off now because we can't we can't do anything about it after this. But we are going to go ahead and get started here. So some housekeeping stuff. First of all, are you all seeing the PowerPoint? I hope so. Just some nods. Okay, fantastic. So please, 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 first thing, stay muted. I'm happy to take any questions verbally. Just use the raise hand function. At the top of your screen, you should see a little hand. Go ahead and click it if you have a question. I'll ask you to unmute from there, but because we're recording, we want to make sure that it stays as quiet as possible and the information is getting through. Like I mentioned, we're going to make this recording available to everybody within a couple of days. I'll send you out a link to our website where you can locate it. Again, ask any questions you like. I am going to have me and the HMIS data committee will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions that you feel like you just want to type out in the chat, please do so, and we'll answer them as we can. And of course, like I said, to make sure we disseminate this information to anybody who might not be here but needs it. Okay, so that's going to be on you all to sort of get it to who needs it. All right. Now, of course, within your agencies. All right, so let's get started. Here's the agenda, sort of an overview of what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to first introduce you to our HMIS Data Committee. Then I want to move into sort of why we're doing this, why we started these. Then we definitely have to cover the new data standard changes that are coming into effect on 10/1 of this year. It's going to look like a lot, and there's going to be more to come on some of these things, but don't panic. I promise we'll work through it together. And then at the end, we're going to have an open Q&A where we can talk about anything and everything HMIS related, any questions you have. I'm going to ask for some feedback on a few things, but that's our overall agenda. Okay. So first, I want you to take a look. So along with these work groups, this past year, we sort of started a data committee. It's sort of it's a small group of individuals who have been in the system either a long time or have a certain position within our continuum where they do a lot of HMIS work. So of course, I am on that committee. My supervisor and coworker, Allison Gill, who couldn't be here today, is also on that committee. She was the previous system administrator. She is now a social program administrator with us. And she's on a very well-deserved vacation this week and next week. So hope she's soaking up sun somewhere. LaTanya Murray is also on our data committee, and I think I saw her. Oh yeah, here she is. Okay, let me see if I can do this. It says I can spotlight. Let's see if I can do that. Sorry, LaTanya, I'm putting you on the spot. There's LaTanya Murray. So she is, I don't know your new title, LaTanya. Go ahead and unmute and you can tell us what your new title is.
It's kind of big. It's Chief Equity and Quality Officer at Frontline.
Okay, and you are overseeing the data department or the HMIS department over there. Once again, she couldn't stay away.
Right. So yeah, like when you said long time, I was like, okay, thanks, Nick.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, I'm not trying to date anybody here, I promise. Thank you. So that's LaTanya. We also have Adrian Williams, who oversees. Oh, I highlighted Carla. Hey, Carla. Sorry. Look at we. Got to stop highlighting. Hi. Where's Adrian? Come on. Okay. Here we go. Hey, Adrian. Adrian
Hello.
Oversees the HMIS department over at Frontline as well. Adrian, anything you want to say?
No, just
no.
Hello, good morning. Happy summer. First day.
First day summer. Yeah. All right. We also have Dave Dasco. Yes. Now I got to find him. Here he is. Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Nick. Hi, everybody.
Dave, you're the director of quality improvement over there now, right?
Correct.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna get these titles right one of these days.
So and Dave HMIS is a big piece of it.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Dave. We also have Ann Hutchison. Let's see if I can hear.
Hi there.
And
Hi there.
and go ahead and tell them what you do.
Yeah,
Yep.
I am. Hi, I'm Ann Hutchison. I'm the manager of compliance, quality improvement, and data at Eden.
Those titles, long title. Yep. Ann has also been in the system for quite some time. You probably knew her from the rapid rehousing days, but
Yep.
she was super instrumental in getting that up in our new HMIS system. So we're glad to have her on board. We also have, last but not least, Ebony Clayton. I got this searching through. Where are you? Oh, I saw you were here. Oh, here she is. Okay. Oh, come on. There she is. Hey, Ebony.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Ebony is with A Place for Me. She is our, currently anyway, our YHDP guru. She's been instrumental in getting that effort up and running, and we're sort of in the implementation phase with that. But we're glad that she's on board. She's been really, really nice to talk to when it comes to data in this project, because not everybody understands it, but she does. So thanks, Ebony, for being with us. And you'll see that we have one vacant spot. And so one or two of you might be getting an email from me within this week or next. We do want to sort of round it out with one other provider represented in our group here. So I just wanted to highlight them for you all, because if I'm ever not available, they're good people to go to and ask questions if you have them. They don't have the answers to everything, just like I don't, but they might be able to guide you in the right direction. So our role on this data committee is really just to look at the data as a whole across the continuum, look at data quality, things like that. If for any reason anything ever happened where we had to sanction an agency because of some sort of violation of our policies, that group would be the one to review those sanctions, all of that stuff. So they have a really cool role. It's not new, but it's newly formed again. So I'm just happy to be working with them. So I'll move on and talk about why we're all here today for these HMIS end user work groups. Again, I'm really excited about this. It's very rare that we can get everybody in one place who uses HMIS. We all do the same work each day, and it's nice to see that it's not just you're not working in a silo, right? You're doing something that really impacts the entire continuum. And so why we're doing these, the idea is to communicate. You get direct communication from me as the COC lead agency, as the HMIS system administrator, but it's a good time for us to discuss and troubleshoot and have very direct communication about HMIS best practices, any changes that are coming up in our system, common errors and issues that you're having that probably other people are having as well. So this is going to be a forum for us to discuss those things. It's also to create a shared sense of accountability. Everything that you're doing in the system means so much to our continuum that you don't understand. I don't think, because you don't see the big picture. It's hard sometimes because you're working at your particular agency, and you're doing very specific work as a shelter or a PSH provider or what. But all of these things play together in our federal reporting, and so we want to use these work groups as a way to say, look, this is what we're doing. It's really impacting a lot of people. You all are working together through this system, and the data matters. Everything that we do requires data from HMIS. Every federal report, every application we turn in, every monitoring that we go through, right? Everything requires some sort of HMIS work, and we would not be able to do any of that without all of you who are in the system every day. So I'll say thank you, of course, and also just know that that's why we're here today, because we want to get you all together in the same space. And of course, we want to collaborate with you. We want to create a space where you can network with each other, get to learn the people's faces on this call, because they might be doing very similar work to you. And you might be able to go to them and ask them the questions that you're facing. We want to create more of an atmosphere where we're all working together, and not everything has to come through the lead agency. So that's why we're here. That's sort of our vision of these groups. So I don't see any questions, so that's good. I'm going to keep moving because we got a lot to cover. So the big chunk of our meeting today is going to be talking about the fiscal year 24 data standard changes that go into effect on 10/1 of 23. I have included links to the HMIS data dictionary. I've included links to the data dictionary as well as the HMIS data standards manual. They are slightly different. The manual really goes into detail about why we collect these things, whereas the data dictionary really goes into detail about each data element, who it's collected for, and all that stuff that's super important. I will send, of course, I'll have this PowerPoint sent out to you. I also have a document, a Word document created that goes over all of these data standard changes. You'll be able to, you see the links on there and use the links on that sheet as well. So there are probably, I think it was ended up being like 20-ish slides of changes, but it's just the way that I worked it out. There's not a ton. A lot of these things are not going to impact your daily workflows at all. A lot of them are language changes or something like that you may need to update your paperwork with. So again, don't panic. It's a lot, but we'll get through them. So let's start with the project descriptor data elements, or PDDEs. Any element in this section is really updated or added or removed by me as the system administrator, but they do impact some of your programming, and so I just want to be able to cover some of these with you. Project descriptor data elements are really those higher level things. When I go to create projects in our system, I have to set the funding sources and the bed and unit counts and all the stuff that really pertains to the higher level project development. And that's what these are really, all these data elements are for. But there's only revisions to a few of them, so let's talk about those. So data element 2.2 is the project information element, and we're going to update a few things about shelters, rapid rehousing, and then sort of overall change. So for shelters, what we used to do is set up a shelter, and then we have to select a tracking method. Either you're going to be a night-by-night shelter or an entry-exit shelter. So night-by-night means you have to entry and exit every single day, right, for people that are coming and going. Entry exit is pretty much what everybody does with our shelters. Is you enter them when they come in, you exit them when they leave, and that doesn't have to be every day. That could be 3 months, it could be a year, it could be however long. So instead of choosing that shelter as the project descriptor, what you're now going to do is select, they've basically combined those two elements. They've said you're either going to be a shelter night by night or you're going to be a shelter entry exit. So all of us, I believe, unless we have something new come on, we're all going to be mapped over. All the shelters are going to be mapped over to the emergency shelter entry exit. Okay, because that's what we do. If you would like to change the way that you track things for your particular shelter, you want to do a night by night, which is a very labor intensive, we'll just say that out loud. Please let me know. We could change that for you. The only project that ever got close to that was the family overflow shelter, where we were doing daily referrals. But we've since changed that. But if we decide we want to go back that route, please just let me know. For rapid rehousing, they've actually added 2 rapid rehousing subtypes, and this is actually going to be sort of impactful to some of you who receive the rapid rehousing funds. So they've added not just rapid rehousing, right, which used to encompass everything rapid rehousing related. We're now going to choose between rapid rehousing, just providing rapid rehousing services, so that's services only, or rapid rehousing, housing with or without services, so where actual rental assistance dollars are involved. Okay. So over here on, I'm going to move real quick over to the actions and implications. So what this means for rapid rehousing providers is that if you are a rapid rehousing project and you're tracking the people that you're serving in your shelter project, so in other words, your shelter project that you have doubles as your rapid rehousing, we're going to have to separate them now. It might be double data entry for you, but the good news is that a lot of that stuff cascades over. It's not like you have to input it all again. So I'm looking at places like Family Promise, Westside Catholic, Salvation Army. Those of you who receive COC rapid rehousing funds for services within the shelter. So that's going to be the biggest impact of that change. If you already are doing rental assistance, nothing is really going to change for you as a rapid rehousing provider. For all projects, they removed a field where I had to select whether or not you were HMIS participating or not, because even those of you, I mean, everybody in here is HMIS participating, right? But places like City Mission and some, but I have to create shell projects in HMIS to cover them on our federal reporting. That's not really going to impact you at all, but just know that I don't have to select that anymore. They've created a whole new data element for that. And they changed some language around domestic violence. So they changed it from domestic violence victim to domestic or to survivor of domestic violence. Give it more of an empowering language, right? I think is the point there. So there is no immediate action for any of you on this call, other than the rapid rehousing projects that are going to go, that are the shelter and rapid rehousing. On 10-1, I'll make sure that your projects are created, and then we'll just switch over to the new tracking method for those. So I'll contact you all who that impacts when that time comes. We also revised, or I say we, I had no say in this, by the way. This is all HUD. So if you have any problems with this, you got to go to HUD, okay? So it's 2.07. We revised that to, it's for bed and unit inventories. And again, so that rapid rehousing change, the subtypes is going to impact the bed and unit inventory. So bed and unit inventories are only going to be required for those projects that are rapid rehousing, housing with or without services. So if there's rental assistance involved. Your rapid rehousing service is only, there's going to be no unit inventories. And just know that that means federal reporting, the HIC, and anywhere we represent or we put out inventory numbers for rapid rehousing are only going to be encompassing those that have rental assistance. Okay. And no immediate action for you all to take, just for you to know before once 10-1 comes. 2.09. So this is kind of a different way of tracking CE participation. So before, we never really had to choose this. There was just a coordinated entry project type, right, which really only applied to Frontline's coordinated entry project. But I think that you all will see over the coming years, a year, or I would say that coordinated entry is going to be is probably going to look a little different. And so the new element is meant to identify projects who are either acting as coordinated entry access points or are receiving referrals from coordinated entry. So for the majority of you, that's just going to be referrals, right? You're going to get you're accepting referrals from coordinated entry. So we'll just select that. But some of you might actually be identified as access points. At that point, we have to select which services you're going to be providing as the coordinated entry entity. So you're either going to be doing homeless prevention assessment, screening and referral, crisis housing assessment, screening and referral, housing assessment, screening and referral, or direct services. So you're doing like housing searches and actual placement. There's no immediate action here needed, but just know that I'm going to probably have questions for you if we identify you as an access point. Otherwise, if you're just receiving referrals, it's pretty simple. They're just going to map that over as you all receive referrals from coordinated entry. All right, so that's it for the PDDEs. I just obviously want to note here that there are many more. These are just the ones that are impacted by the changes that have come through from HUD. Just know that there are a ton of other data elements, and you can see all of those in those manuals and the data dictionary, okay? So we're going to get into the universal data elements now, which elements in this section actually impact you all who do the work daily in HMIS. So the first thing they did is they revised 3.04, which is the race and ethnicity. So they have combined what used to be, of course, everyone knows this because it's still this way now, is that race is one selection, and then you select an ethnicity, which is really just encompassing if you're Hispanic or non-Hispanic or Latino. And so what they've done is they've combined them so that you can select any of these options here listed. So you got American Indian, Alaska Native, or Indigenous, Asian or Asian American, Black, African American or African, Hispanic, Latina, Latin, or Latino, Middle Eastern or North African, which is new and very much needed. There was a ton of people that we would have as like client refused or preferred not to answer is the new answer. We'll get there in a second. But that they finally figured out that they needed to add something for that. And so they did. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, white, client doesn't know, client prefers not to answer, and data not collected. No, I just want to note this here that client prefers not to answer was never a response option for us. It was always client refused. Well, they have changed client refused on 10.1. It'll go to client prefers not to answer, which is much more reflective of what usually is happening. It's not that they're refusing to give us information. It's just that they just don't want to answer it, which is totally fine, right? So an additional field has also been added to this list where you can type in any additional information that they provide to you about their race or ethnicity. So you'll have the ability to do that as well. So actions and implications. So make sure that first and foremost, you update all of your internal paperwork to reflect changes like this. You know, if you're using some sort of document that you capture all the data on, and then you transfer that data into HMIS, you want to make sure that these new options are reflected on all of your stuff as well, okay? And so when it comes to when any data standard changes happen, what usually happens is the vendor, ours is BitFocus, if you didn't know that, will transfer the data over, they'll map it to the new data elements. So that is going to happen, but it's really going to be important for you all to check that, okay? So for those clients that maybe do identify as Middle Eastern or North African, that was never an option before. So it's just going to map over to client refer not to answer, and you'll have to make sure you go in and change them to the correct race once you get those changes in effect, okay? So in other words, just check it for accuracy. Keep checking your clients. You just want to make sure the profile screens are always correct, because that's sort of the bigger universal data elements there that are going to be important for every client, okay? They've also changed the way that they're doing gender. So 3.06 is the gender element. So they've moved away from sex-based terminology and updated it to gender-based terminology. And it's going to be a multi-select list for you. So they've changed the options to woman or girl if child, man or boy if child. Culturally specific identity, the example they use is two-spirit. Transgender, non-binary, questioning, different identity, which at that point you have a text box, you can enter, you can type in the response. Client doesn't know, client prefers not to answer, and data not collected. Okay, so those are your response options. So the same things here, make sure you're updating your internal paperwork if that applies to you. And while things are going to be mapped over by the vendor, you want to make sure that that is still accurate for all of your clients when you go back in, okay? So they changed the way that they have organized these elements. So 3.12 is the exit destination, and 3.917A and B are the prior living situation elements. So the list of options they've reorganized under different headers, and I'm going to show you the appendix in a second, so you'll be able to get an idea of what I'm talking about here. They've also added a dependent field, excuse me, for the permanent subsidize option. So instead of having to select right now, right, we have all those options. Rental by client with this subsidy, rental by client with this other subsidy, rental by client. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to select rental by client with an ongoing subsidy, and then it'll give you the different options to choose from. So it's a little bit clearer cut. They've added a few options as well for the different subsidy types that you might see. They added some language, which I think is really important to note. They added some language. So where they say approximate date homelessness started, they added the words this episode. So it reads approximate date this episode of homelessness started. So this is really important for like specifically shelters, right? Because you're going to be talking about this most recent episode. Now, if somebody was unsheltered prior to coming into your system or your shelter, you want to add that date still wants to encompass that unsheltered state, right? That's still one episode. So you want to go back to the beginning of this current episode of homelessness. For PSH providers, you want to make sure that it's going to still say this episode of homelessness, but you want to make sure you're still reflecting if chronic homelessness is a requirement of your project. You want to make sure that enrollment assessment still shows that they have chronic status. Okay. Okay. All right, so all of these things are listed in Appendix A of the HMIS data standards, and I do want to just pull it up for you real quick because I want you to see the new headers specifically. So this might be a little tiny. Is that too big? No, I can't even see. Okay, so they've reorganized. So we have our homeless situation. So you got place not meant, emergency shelter, safe haven. So those are all homeless situations. Then you have your institutional situations. Okay, all these are pretty much the same: foster care, hospital, psych hospital, jail, right? Then they separated, this is where they made the change. So we have temporary housing situations. So you'll have your transitional housing, your residential project or halfway house, which used to be under like the other category for some reason. Hotel or motel paid for without an emergency voucher, a host home, staying or living with family for temporarily, friends temporarily, any moving from one HOPWA funded project to a HOPWA TH, which doesn't really impact our community much. And then staying or living in a friend's room or family's house, I should say. And then they have the permanent situations. Okay, so these are all the ones that we know about: staying with your family permanently, staying with your friends permanently, moving into a HOPWA PH. Then you get the rental by client that they don't have a subsidy. And then they have a rental by client where they do have a subsidy. And then they get right into the owned by client. So before we had like all those options, right? So if you were to select rental by client with an ongoing subsidy, you then have to select from these subsidy types. So GPD TIP, BASH, rapid rehousing, HCV, that's a housing choice voucher, public housing unit, rental by client with some other that's not listed here, emergency housing voucher. They've added in FUP, which is a family unification program. So that's for the youth, the foster youth to independence initiative or FYI voucher. Permanent supportive housing is now very clearly listed. So before we had that option of permanent, I think they said permanent housing for formerly homeless persons, and it was very unclear if that was PSH or not. That was sort of our go-to for PSH. But now they've actually listed that there. So you'll be able to select that as the subsidy. And then other permanent housing dedicated for formerly homeless persons. Okay. So I also want to call attention, I know this isn't related to the data standard, but Appendix B in the manual also lists all of these acronyms. So if you're seeing acronyms, if you're new to the system, if you're hearing a bunch of acronyms, a lot of them are spelled out here, so you can see exactly what they are. So I just want to call attention to that too. All right, which might be a good resource outside of just HMIS, right? Okay, so actions or implications for this is just update that paperwork again. So you're going to see that as sort of the action for you each time on each of these slides. So just make sure that all of your stuff is updated and reflects the changes. Okay.
Nick, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Stephanie.
Yes. Where would CMHA fall?
CMHA, it's a great question. Public housing. So CMHA is our public housing.
So we have specific. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I didn't see it when you initially scrolled down. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's going to be our go-to for sure. And if it's helpful, what I can do is sort of create sort of a walkthrough for some of these. Like, here's what this means in our community, because these are sort of just national terms, right? They have to use vague terms to cover a lot of different things, but I can maybe spell out in our community what's available, what's not, right? So good question. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're moving on to program specific data elements now. So, Vita, I see a hand up. So go ahead, Vita.
She mentioned the public housing for the Section 8, which is are you guys considering that public housing as well, or is that something separate?
Yeah, I would consider that public housing. I have to sit with this a little bit longer too, Vita. We got some months. But
Section 8 would be considered an HCV voucher. That's what they refer to them as.
So that's what I was going to ask. Is it ACV?
Yes.
Yeah, the ACVP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that's good. Again, this is
Yeah,
why we need
so
that walkthrough. I'm gonna
think-
create that.
You know what, Nick, think public housing as CMHA like properties
Yes.
and tenant-based vouchers, like where they can go to regular rental units in the community would be HCV.
Okay.
And like Eden's mainstream program would fall under HCV.
Right. Okay.
It was just missing the P for me, so I was a little confused,
Yeah.
but I got it.
Eden
Shelter plus care would end up being shelter plus care would end up falling under permanent supportive housing.
Yep.
Thanks,
So I
Ann,
know
you
we
answered
all-
my
And I
questions.
just want to clarify, I know we all think that PSH is our buildings, but it's not. It's our scattered sites as well.
Yep.
So Eden scattered sites are considered part of permanent supportive housing. And a lot of those are they do have like extensions on those grants too.
Well, I think I found somebody who's volunteering to create that walkthrough for me. It sounds
No,
like
no,
Ann.
I'm not. No, oh damn. Shoot, I'm gonna shut up now.
Just kidding. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you very
Nick,
much. For the
whatever you
clarification.
need, let me know.
Oh, thanks. Okay, we got some people sitting in the lobby. All right. So thank you for that. It's good. That's exactly why I have you all here, because I would have answered that totally wrong. Okay. Program specific data elements, PSDEs. These are, again, things that you're going to see as the end users in the system every day. So the first thing, 4.04 health insurance, they changed some language. So it used to be Veterans Administration Medical Services. They changed to Veterans Health Administration. So just update your internal paperwork for that. Pretty simple. The current living situation 4.12, this is basically only, okay, so it only applies to certain projects. We'll get to that in a second, but this is the same exact change that we were those locations and how they just reorganized them. They changed some of the language. They've added the dependent field. That's just applying to this current living situation as well. So this is only going to be collected. This is only collected by emergency shelter night by nights, which we don't have any right now. Street outreach services. So there are some street outreach services. Some services only who collect that, which I'm thinking, looking at PATH, right? That's the only one that really collects current living situation, and coordinated entry projects. So you'll have to just reflect those changes for the paperwork that you're going to do for that. Okay. All right. So 4.12 is brand new. It's coordinated entry activity is what they're calling it. This actually takes the place of retired elements 4.19 and 4.20. The long story short here is that there's going to be a lot more to come with this one. So what they've done is they try to streamline this element, because we had the assessment, which we had to talk about, like, hey, was this over the phone? Was it in person? What happened as a result? Is it a crisis, right? Or is this just a housing assessment? Is it a crisis housing or just a regular housing assessment? And then you would have to fill out something called a coordinated entry event, which is what was the referral that was made from this assessment, right? So what they've done is they've just combined the two. And if you're coordinated entry right now, you might be like, man, I don't even know what you're talking about, Nick. And it's because a lot of that was automated behind the scenes. So BitFocus implemented a lot of sort of behind the scenes logic to make sure that if you made a referral to a shelter, the coordinated entry event that was associated with that would automatically be in. So I'm thinking they're probably going to do something very similar to that. So that's why I say here, more to come. I don't know what it's going to look like in our system yet, but just know it's a little bit longer, it's lengthier, but I have a feeling that a lot of it's going to be automated. So for those of you who end up being pegged as the coordinated entry access points, we're going to talk about this more as a group when I know more about how it's going to look. Okay. All right, federal partner program specific data elements. So these are data elements that are at the program level, but they only apply to certain federal partner funding sources. So COC funding, Veterans Administration funding, runaway and homeless youth funding. So we're going to talk about each of those. The first thing, if you're a PSH provider, everyone can clap their hands because well-being is no longer, they're retiring it. So after 2 years of trying to collect it, they realize this is no good. We're not getting any information from this. So So they've retired the well-being questions. You don't have to collect them anymore. On 9:30, you can stop collecting it. So I can't tell you to stop now, okay? But you have to stop you can stop on 9:30. So it makes you update all your paperwork. You can get rid of all those questions. You don't have to collect it at all. Enrollment.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, I didn't do it. HUD did it, but
Thank you.
yeah, no longer have to collect that at enrollment, assessment, or exit. So that's completely gone. All right. So for COC, this the only thing that applies to us. This is for COC, ESG Rush, and Special NOFOs. But the only one that applies to us is COC, of course, because we don't have any of the others. Is C4. So C4 translation assistance needed. So all projects for head of household only, what they're asking you to do is collect information on if people need translation services when they come into your system, or I call it the system, when they come into your program. If the client needs translation assistance, so you'll select, yes, they need translation assistance. They're going to come up with 20 languages that you can choose from. You can select different language, different preferred language, and then type in the language if it's not in the list. And then, of course, your basic, the client doesn't know, client prefers not to answer, and data not collected. Okay. So anybody who receives COC funding, so that's going to be coordinated entry, permanent supportive housing, right? These are going to come in. These are going to be now on your enrollment assessments. Okay. Of course, if somebody doesn't need that, it's just going to be no, and then you're going to move on. There's going to be nothing else to do with that. Okay. So just, again, updating paperwork, any internal stuff to reflect the collection of that. All right. All right. There's a new requirement for COC PSH projects only. So they have made it a requirement now to collect a RI data element, R3, sexual orientation. So sexual orientation has been long required by RI projects, okay? If you receive runaway homeless youth funding, you have had to collect this for a long time. I also sent out an email just recently that I have in trying to enforce a very strong local recommendation to collect this for everybody that you're serving, okay? No matter what project you are. But now it is very much a requirement for COC PSH providers to collect this. It'll be on your enrollment assessment, but I'm going to make it so that if you collect it on the profile screen, which is where it exists now because of the local requirement, that it's just going to copy over. It's going to cascade onto your enrollment assessment. Okay. So you need to update that paperwork again. If you are a PSH provider, you must collect this now. All right. Okay. So for any of you who are doing, excuse me. They've changed some language, really, is all they've done for some of your data elements. So let's just breeze through these real quick. If you have questions, of course, let me know. R14, the RI service connections for all RI projects, head of households and adults only. You want to update, they updated language about postnatal mother to, they changed the word from mother to client or person who gave birth. All right. R17, the project completion status. Applies to all RI projects, head of households and adults only. Anywhere where youth, the word youth was used, they've just changed that to client. R18, counseling. This one makes no sense to me. Okay, but they've changed the language from client received counseling to counseling received by client. Why? Who knows? But that's a change. And that's it. So it's really just language changes for you. And so if you want to update that language on your paperwork, please do so. I always encourage them to stay consistent. If you don't want to go through the process of changing some language on yours and you can still collect the information, great. But again, my recommendation is to always have things align where they can. Veteran administration. So VA projects, elements that are changing. So V1, veterans information, they've added it says form, but it's supposed to say force. They've added Space Force as a response option, which, like, how cool, we're living in the future age. So there's that. The V2 services provided SSVF. So all SSVF projects where, and this is for all clients receiving the specific service, of course, they've changed extended shallow subsidy to just shallow subsidy. And likewise, they've changed that V3 financial assistance for the shallow subsidy from extended shallow subsidy rental assistance to shallow subsidy financial assistance. They've added landlord incentive and tenant incentive as financial services to track, and changed the response. Okay, so they changed it from date of financial assistance to a start date and an end date function. So you now, if a financial assistant if it lasts over a period of time, you can track that period of time instead of just like a one-time financial assistance help, if that makes sense. They've also changed V4, the percent of AMI for you. This is for the SSVF eligibility. They've expanded the list to just include different percentages. So it's all the way up. So it's from 30% or less all the way to 81 or greater. They've retired the V5 last permanent address. So you don't have to collect that for any SS or any VA project anymore. You don't have to collect the last permanent address, which that'll just be removed from your enrollment assessment. Okay. And V7, which is the HP targeting, so the homeless prevention targeting criteria, they've language on 4 of those elements. I've listed that here for you. I don't even look at what it was before, because the SSVF projects that operate within our continuum are really good. So I have a feeling that it's changed, but that's just some language changes. So update your paperwork is just the action for you. Okay. Okay. Well, that covers. So I just want to say this too, that again, those are just the ones that are changed. So you all do the work. You see that there's a lot of data to be collected. So don't think that this is all that's going on in our system. There's a lot of other data elements that are collected. It's just these are the ones that have changes applied on 10.1. Okay. All right. So we got through that pretty quick. So I'll open it up for right now. Let's open it up for questions on any of these data standard changes if you have them. You can either come off mute and just let me know you ask a question. You can throw it in the chat. If there's no questions, we'll open it up to like the bigger Q&A session, but let's start with data standard changes. Nothing.
Hey, Nick.
All right. Yeah. Hey, Ebony.
I was just curious about the translation assistance needed. Once a language is selected, like practically what would the next step be for like a case manager or provider? Like, are they connecting them with the translation services, or will there be like a pop-up to select a resource so that translation assistance can be provided, or is it just we're just notating that they need it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish it was so like integrated with other entities that we could just select it and then we can connect them with the service they need. But it's not. Unfortunately, there's going to be that extra step of if you receive COC funding, it's already written into your contract that you have to have some sort of translation services as sort of equal access to your project. So just know that if you select that, we would have no way of tracking this, but we would be expecting that you're doing that work outside of HMIS, of course, right? So practically speaking, I think this is, that's just a practice that happens within the different agencies themselves. We're trying to track, how many people English is not their primary language, right?
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question about the gender.
Yes.
I noticed that they still have transgender separated from woman and man, and that if you select both transgender and woman or transgender and man, it is only showing transgender under the APR. Is that going to change, or do we need to select the gender that they identify with most, or what do you want us to do with that?
Yep. So so it's a multi-select list. So you'll go ahead and select whatever applies. in the APR, now I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling, this is just based on what the changes that they've made that are similar to this, is that I think it's going to look a lot like when you see the disabilities on the APR. You can count in more than one of those disabilities. I think that's how they're going to do the counting, the aggregating. So if you select, transgender and women or woman, then that client will just appear in both, right? So more to come on that, Robbie. It's a good question. I'll let you know when I see when they roll out the sort of sandbox APR that they always roll out for me, where I can see where the changes look like.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Nick, there's a question in the chat from Loretta. They're asking, is it required to ask the enrollee their sexual orientation?
Got it. Yeah. So yes, that is going to be required for only PSH projects. That's the HUD requirement now for COC PSH projects. It is a very strong local recommendation to collect that on the profile screen. So I've added that as a data element to collect. Everybody should be collecting it. I understand that I've heard from a lot of you like, hey, I don't think it's appropriate at this level or whatever. I understand that. I totally understand in practice, it doesn't always make sense to ask that question, but it is a blanket statement that you all are going to be required locally to do that. Okay. And okay, yep, Shakenya, I see your comment. Thank you. I will do that. Any other questions about the data standard changes? Okay, I don't hear anything, so let's move forward. Sorry, this makes nobody dizzy. Let's go into sort of the open form question and answer. So I want you to be able to tell me anything you have on your mind, please let me know. Make it HMIS related, okay. Tell me what's on your mind about HMIS. If you have any best practice questions, what I'm really interested in, I think a lot of us that we spent a lot of time getting into clarity, right? We did it right if you were there, you went smack in the middle of the pandemic. It was super challenging, but we just hit our 3-year anniversary in the system. And I'm really interested to get some feedback from you on the system. I've talked to some of you before, of course. Want to hear from more of you, though, about how you're liking it, what you don't like. If you have any system enhancements that you think would be really helpful. We have a contract. I see your hand up, Carla. I will get to you. 1 second. We have a contract with BitFocus that extends past just the basic use of Clarity. We have the ability to ask for different changes and modifications to our system. So I'm interested in that stuff. And then any common issues, because we want to be able to share that information. People might be having the same problem. All right, Carla, go ahead.
You know, I've been noticing on our end, when we are putting our HMIS into the system and the people are coming from frontline, their information, by the time they get to me and I enter into their data, I don't see where they went down the front line. I don't even see, and then by the time I apply to Eaton for them, they're saying they have never registered for frontline, and they did it right in our office.
You're talking about coordinated entry, Carla?
Sorry for the noise. Hold on 1 minute.
It's okay. So I'm going to assume she's mentioning coordinated entry. So I think just a blanket statement here about timeliness. Okay, in general, right? We ask that all agencies, once you find out about an intake or an enrollment or an exit, that we're doing that within 24 hours of being notified of that change. We recognize, of course, that there are challenges. Some of you have whole data teams that information has to flow to. That flow doesn't always go as quick as we'd like as data people. So we recognize that there's challenges to that. Coordinated entry, I know that they're doing a great job. We just have to, we talked a lot about timeliness of that information as well. So Carla, I think that's what you're referring to, is just making sure that if you're getting a referral from coordinated entry, that referral exists when you go to do your data entry. in HMIS, if that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we will work on that for sure. What else? Okay, Joan, see hand up.
Hi. So I had a best practice question about sometimes we get referrals from coordinated entry, and either the social security number is off by a number or like there's a spelling thing. So it seems like it's the person that we brought in, but I'm not really sure how to follow up to make sure.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Nikki Eggert is on the call. Hi, Nikki. Nikki Eggert is obviously she runs coordinated entry over there. She does a great job. So I always recommend either reaching out to her, reaching out to one of her coordinators to make sure that it's the right person. You can always reach out to Adrian Williams as well, who oversees the data that goes into HMIS from coordinated entry, just to make sure that you guys have the right information. Duplicates happen. I correct them all the time, and it's okay. We'll just, if Joan, if you don't see the right person, happy to just, if you want to add them in the way you know that they should be added in, and then just send me an email too and say, hey, I think this is the same person as this, right? And give me the ID. I can take a look as well, maybe merge them, maybe I can do that middleman work too with Frontline. But that's sort of a good thing that we're here for, right? Is to see those people's faces, reach out to them, know who they are, because maybe going through me might take a little bit more time, right?
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I just dropped my email in the chat. So, with the volume of intakes we're completing, there's going to be some margin of error in regards to like social security number and name spellings. But if you reach out to me, I can help figure this out and see what we can do on our end to correct that issue.
Thank you. I meant to say this. I see your hand up, Daniel. I'll get to you in 1 second. Carla, I just want to make sure that we know where everyone's from. So Carla is from Fair Hill Senior Guest House. So she asked that first question. We talked about Nikki from Frontline. Joan is from the YMCA, Y Haven. And now we'll go to Daniel. Daniel.
Hi. I was wondering, I've looked at the Data Standard Dictionary and the Data Standards Manual. I was wondering if there's any sort of guide to the actual database, like I and one of my coworkers at Eden have been trying to use like the Explorer tool and Looker in Clarity to sort of build up custom reports. And it's kind of hard to figure out how sometimes all the fields relate to each other. So I was wondering if there's like an actual database guide that describes all the fields and how everything's actually organized and put together on a structural level.
Yeah. So Daniel, you were with Eden. Yeah, I think that's what you said. Eden. Is that right?
Yeah, Nick,
Yes.
he does he's working on kind of the analytics aspects of our data.
Okay.
So
Cool.
Daniel is Daniel, when did you start? 6 months ago?
In January.
Right. Oh, January. Oh, not even 6 months ago. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So we're really excited for Daniel's knowledge to kind of help us start really looking at what our data means and trying to really communicate that out to the community.
Yeah, so I try to build reports, and also I've been working with another one of my colleagues, Tanya, has expressed an interest in building like a custom error report, and so far we've been working together on it. We haven't really been able to sort of hack together something that actually gives us the information that we want. I can kind of see like in like one of the data quality reports that there's fields that seem like they should work, but we haven't got them to work the way we think they like intuitively looks like it should. So if there's some sort of manual explaining how this thing actually works, it would help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So So those of you who don't know what Daniel's referring to, Looker is the custom reporting tool. So if you ever ask me for information that's not readily available in a canned report in HMIS, we go through what's called Looker. It's connected directly to all the data that you're entering in, and it's a really, really nice, convenient way to pull information out where we haven't really had that ability to in the past. Daniel, to answer your question, I'm happy to walk through some of that with you as well. So I've been in Looker ever since we started. They gave me like a formal training on it. I can explain to you the best of the way I know how to best. You probably know a lot more about analytics than I do. And so I can do that for you. I'm happy to reach out to BitFocus. I'm sure that they have something written out about what each of those data elements means, how they connect to each other. I'll be honest with you, when it comes to more complex report development, I always go to them through our extended contract to say, hey, can you build this for me? Because I could do pretty basic stuff, but they get into like table calculations and custom data measures and dimensions. And so let's chat a little bit more offline. I'll get a sense of what it is you're looking for, and then I can always go to BitFocus and say, hey, can you maybe come and do a formal training for anybody who is interested, right? We can set that up as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So yep.
There are a couple questions in the chat that I wanted
Thank
to
you.
raise.
I was just getting to that. Yeah.
One is from Loretta Stiles. She wrote that their common issue is when they close the case and the question is housing assessment and exit. My client may be still in the process of moving, so how do they handle that?
Yeah. Okay. So Loretta, let me come in here. Loretta, you're with the Office of Aging, please. I'm trying. Okay, so the housing assessment at exit, it's tough. So you want to select the exit, you have to select an exit destination, right? That exit destination, you want to make sure it matches with whatever you put underneath it with the housing assessment. So if you know, yeah, they're in the process of moving, but you know that they're moving into that unit, you can just select that as the housing assessment. Okay. If it changes, God forbid, you can go back in and just edit it. Okay. I know it's tough because you're always like, it's always so black and white in HMIS, right? But there's a lot of gray area when it comes to actually doing the work. So thank you for raising that.
And another question raised by Denise Turner was that whether or not it's possible to receive updated instructions on running APR and HUD CSV reports.
Yeah, Denise Turner's from the YWCA, Place for Me. Yeah, so absolutely, I can send those to you. I unfortunately don't have anything like formally written out. They have help desk articles, but they don't always update them in real time. So, and I think it makes a lot more sense to create stuff like that at a local level because different things apply, right? So I'm happy to create to update our instructions and send them out to you. Yes. You know what? I'm saying yes to things and I'm not writing anything down. So let me hold on. Okay. Anything else? Is that so? This is actually a question for you all, and maybe just give me thumbs up, head nods, whatever. Do you think it'd be helpful if we create something like that where it could apply to everybody, right? Is that something you would want readily available on a website? Do you want me to you want to just ask me for it and I can email it to you? I guess, okay, I can't ask a multi-answer. Put something like that on the website so you can all have access to it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going through some of these. Okay. I know that this wasn't a direct question for me, but we're asking about some of these personal identifying documents. So social security cards, state IDs, birth certificates. If you are collecting those, now coordinated entry used to do that when it was a more of an in-person service. They don't anymore because it's over the phone. If they come to you and they have documents that maybe they lose them a lot, maybe you know that it's best that we just hang on to a copy. We now, and I've sent out an email about this, you have the ability to upload those documents into HMIS and have that as like the holder, right? Keep it in there. This is going to help with access to those documents for people who need them on like the housing end, right? So if you as at a shelter collect a birth certificate and Eden needs it for an application of some sort, well, then you can say, hey, Eden, there's a copy of it here, right? Take a look, whatever, or you can just open it yourself and, make a copy of it and send it along in the application. So, we want you to continue. I don't know how many people, if anybody is using that right now, but we want you to, if you feel it necessary.
Nick, I want to start using it because I let my staff know that. But where does it go? Like, where would I upload that at?
Yep. So good question. I think you should be seeing my screen, which I totally forgot about. So, but that's okay. Here you go. So okay, you could do it in two places, but I think the most appropriate place is actually client's record. Right at the top, there's a files section. Okay. Within that file selection, you can click over here, add a file.
Okay.
And then you can actually select what category it falls in, personal identification, and then you have all these options to choose from. Okay. You can select it. So just like you would upload any document into any database, you do the same thing. You can make it private. Now, if you select to make it private, just know that your agency is the only one that's going to be able to see that. So it might defeat the purpose. So you might want to leave that checked off as sort of, or I guess flipped off, right? And then you would just add it in. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I
have a question.
Yeah.
Is there and I'm sorry if you said this, I had to go warm up food because I was really hungry, so I might have missed something. This is during lunch. So
yes.
Is there a messaging feature within the system that we could message each other with?
Yep. So over here on the right now, there's a inbox.
I guess if I'm the only one that's going to use it, no one else.
Yeah.
I won't be getting any responses, but I'm just wondering, to streamline some of these discrepancies. I guess email is fine, right? But I guess if we have something built within the feature that we're able to,
Yep. Absolutely. So we do have it.
System. So
yeah, we do. And so this thing for me, it gets inundated with messages, like automated messages, that I updated a referral or I did, something like that. You get those messages here, but you can, if you click on it, you go to new message. You would, the COC is always the same. You would select the agency you want to send something to, and then I can send Ann a message right here, right? And it would show up in her HMIS inbox. All right. So the other thing, if you have like a specific client alert, right, or something like that that you want people to know about, you can go into notes at the top of the screen, and there's a public alerts, and you can sort of you can add in something that you want people to know. So a lot of times what people use this for in like the service point days, if you were around for those, was, oh yeah, this client is banned from, I don't know, Norm or her for X amount of days, right? You can put stuff like that in their record, and people can reference it. But now, to Nikki's point, this is only as good as the people using it. If you don't look at it, you don't look at it, and you'll never know, right?
So I will test this feature out and send it to multiple people that are in this work group, and then we'll see who response.
Great. I like that. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left. And so I am interested a little, I mean, I know these are a lot of good questions. If you have more questions, please fire away. I am interested in some feedback on the system. So is there anything that you are like, man, I love this, man, I hate this? You know, anything like that that you can think of is going to be helpful for me. Okay, apparently I don't know how to use PowerPoint. But all that's going to be helpful for me to take back to them and say, excuse me, I know this is going to be like, no one pass out, okay? Okay. But it's going to be helpful for me to take that information back to them, right? And say, quick links, yeah. To say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm hearing from our end users. You know, I need some of that feedback. It's going to be really important. So I'd love to hear some.
So in the area where we provide services and track that, there is like a really strong lag sometimes, even a error to where you have to restart the page. I don't know what that is, but it's always been that way, and it is very time consuming to
Okay.
have to do that, and the page kind of like drops down to the bottom and you got to scroll back up every time you submit a service. So
Okay.
I will say that that's very bothersome.
That's good to know. So I don't ever put any services in Kai, so that is good feedback. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, I obviously know what it looks like, but I don't know what that, you know, in terms of process looks like. Thank you. Anybody else having, you mentioned a lag. Anybody else having a lag with APRs? Anybody that runs them a lot? No, I don't see anybody saying it. Maybe it's just me. User error. Okay, Stephanie, your hand was up first. Go ahead.
When oh, I'm forgetting my question. When we are, I think where I'm having trouble at, there's an error when you're trying to add in when they've signed off on like a the release of information,
Yeah.
you know, point when you're adding it into the system, it's still erroring out. I know you had seen it before and worked on it, but it's still doing that.
Okay. So you're referring to, so when we were, I think we were trying to add one in, a new one for somebody, right?
Yeah, when you go up to
And
like manage, yeah, when it says release of information is missing,
yeah,
and you're trying to add that, it errors, and then you have to like kind of keep clicking to get it to go through.
okay. So so I know there's been a few people have asked this of me before, and have you been changing the start and end dates to reflect? So okay, sorry, that was a weird question, but so today's 6/21, this particular person doesn't have one that goes to 6/21, right? But if I'm trying to add in a release, let's say for 6/3 of 23, it's going to overlap with this Joseph Home one, okay? So what we have to do is change the start date to 6/5 of 23 and have it still end on 6/3 of 26. But if we update the dates so they don't overlap, you should be able to get it in there. And so am I hearing that you're trying that and it's still not working?
No, well, I'm putting the date as the start date is for when they start at my shelter at you know, a Family Promise.
Yeah.
So if the other one hasn't closed out, then maybe that is the issue. I'll double check because it automatically populates its end date. So I'm just starting from when they actually move in and have signed the document to say they're releasing that information. So if there's a different date on a, you know, someone else who also got a release, I haven't paid as much attention of when it errors out to that date. So I'll look when I go back in today and see if it's overlapping, if that's what's causing the error message.
Yeah, try that. So I know some people still had problems with that method. I just want to make sure that I realize, I said this in a meeting the other day and people didn't know that, and I think it's really important to know, is that Our releases of information cover the entire continuum. Everybody that's in HMIS. So if Stephanie at Family Promise gets a ROI and she puts it in, it covers everybody for 3 years. Okay. Now, we always are going to encourage you to have the client sign a new one when they come into your project, so you have it on file, but it does cover everybody. Okay. All right. I see Vita, you were next.
I just have a question about the APR report because we do those comparisons. So when we run that, there is no way for that data to be where I could select if I only want to just see the closed people. I always have to copy and put in Excel and do my own sorting. There's no way to do that.
Not with the APR. So the APR is like that's a federal report, right?
Okay.
That's very prescribed what has to come out of that report. Now, there are other canned reports where you can look at just people who are closed. Now, you might not have as much detail, right? You're not going to see a bunch of the information, but one of the reports that I always like to use when you're trying to look at people who maybe just came in during this time period or exited during this time period is going to be under your program-based reports, and it's called client demographics. Okay, so it's going to give you a really, really cool look at all the different demographics. It gives you charts and everything. Okay, but you'll be able to click on the numbers too, so you can see the client set, and you just choose down here either all active, newly enrolled, or exiting during whatever time period you select. Nikki?
Sorry, I had a couple questions. In regards to the release, you may have mentioned this, I'm sorry. Does the system default for 3 years?
Yeah.
So, okay, so when it says, what does it say? Expired or missing or whatever. So it does default to when the last release was completed for 3 years.
It defaults when the last release by your agency was completed. So even though our releases cover us all, this message is really meant to just ensure compliance on your agency's end. So anything on, so this is the fake client. So the last one from Frontline was in here on, it's good till 12/20/24. So if I was in here as Frontline, it wouldn't give me that message because we're covered right now. But because I'm in here as the system, it's telling me I don't have one to do anything with this client.
But all the agencies are covered, right?
Yes. From a practice perspective, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's a little weird. Also, is there going, now that documents are being able to be uploaded, is there going to be in the future, do you predict a requirement to upload the HMIS release into?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. And then my final question, since I had my hand raised, I'm going to ask a million questions. Can you build like custom reports, or because there's a lot of stuff I want to run in Clarity that it's just like, let's say for instance, maybe I want to run a report to see where our volume is throughout the week. So I want to report like on just Mondays for the past few months and then Tuesdays, instead of just running an APR. Is there a way to just run like weekday specific reports?
Yeah, so that's gonna be a custom report, which I am happy to build for you. Let's chat, and I'll make it available to your agency.
Okay, thank you.
Jeanette.
Hey, Nick, I miss you. It's been 7 years.
It's been a long time.
Okay, so Nick, so I do like how the clarity system lets you know when a client, because I do PSH, so it does let you know when a person has aged into adulthood, and it lets you know when there's a program status assessment should be done. Okay, so I'm just wondering, I like that about this clarity system. I wanted to share that, but is there any action I should be taking on it? Because clarity shows that this is specifically for me, but I'm wondering, are like the supervisors, the managers, are they like also getting that message?
Yeah. So the answer to that question is no. So the way that the system works is that anytime you are the person entering the data, you become the primary worker. That primary worker is the one who receives all the alerts, all of the update, notifications, that kind of stuff. The When the aging into adulthood thing, I do like that it tells us that, but that is definitely going to be anybody who opens that client is going to see that notification from your agency. But if you're getting something like in your email or something about that, then that's only going to go to you, right? Because you're the primary worker.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank
you. Yep. Okay. Stephanie.
With the referrals that we usually get, like, we'll get from coordinated entry, sometimes when I'm entering a client into our HMIS, or at least our program, if there's no referral attached to it. So does that mess up something? How would we then get a referral to connect? Because I know all of our referrals are, we're supposed to show that all referrals flow from coordinated entry.
Yeah.
But they're not always in the system.
Yep. So it would mess up reporting for sure. So there's a link. I'm sure you've probably seen it. If you go to like the history tab, you have the referral there, and there's always like a link next to your enrollment because it's basically linking that referral from coordinated entry to your enrollment. So yeah, it's really important that it's there, because what that means is that coordinated entry did its job and they forced, they pushed that referral through. If you enter your enrollment before there is a coordinated entry referral, or maybe the coordinated entry is there, it's just they maybe missed the referral or for whatever reason, reach out to Adrian, who can guide the CE data staff to maybe go in and enter that in. Adrian also has the ability to link manually those referrals once. So if your enrollment came first and then they put the referral in after, Adrian has sort of her way of linking that referral to your enrollment. So we get the credit that we need for that.
Okay. Can I have her email address? Because I have a couple of people I know it didn't connect to.
Sure. Yeah.
She did put it in the chat.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat.
Yep. It's up a little bit further, but yeah, it's there.
Thank you.
Yep. Shakenya.
Hey, Nick. So my question is also about the referrals. Norma Hart gets a ton of referrals, and most of them people do not come to our shelter. So I was wondering if the system is able to automatically remove that referral in a shorter time frame, because I've been getting emails recently from like 2021 saying that it's denying because it wasn't accepted. So if the time frame could be shorter.
Yeah, so it should be. So if you see here, I'm in the YWCA and I'm looking at pending referrals that have come through. It should be expiring within 30 days. Or maybe again, I got to remember what the time frame is, but we did set that up because that was one of those custom things. Yeah, that was one of those custom things I had to work on with them because they didn't have that in to automatically expire some of these referrals. So it should be doing that. If you're receiving 2021, that's weird, but I wonder if it's like somebody manually did that, right? Like somebody went in and manually changed that for some reason.
I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know.
I see them coming off, but it's not always within that 30-day window. Sometimes it's longer.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so I know. Okay, now I'm remembering this. So these referrals will stay active past the 30-day mark if and only if they have some action that occurs on their record. So if, let's say they were referred to Norma Herb, but they ended up going to, I don't know, Zelma George, I don't know, who knows? They go to somewhere else, okay? They get an enrollment into that project. That counts as some action on their record. So it's going to start that 30-day clock over again. Okay. So that's the only reason. Now, 2021, again, that's a long time for someone to continuously be homeless, right? And then it just never falls off. But like there's a few of these, like 33 days, right? If I wanted to go into their record and look at it, you'll probably see that they were enrolled somewhere else. So that 30-day time period is just going to keep going, right?
Okay. And I had another question. Well, Vita had another question regarding custom reports.
Okay.
Vita.
Did you just put me on blast?
I did, because I couldn't answer your question.
Yeah, I was just asking, when you do are you going to do a separate meeting for customer reports? I just have a question. I'm just trying to make stuff easier for what we do every week, because it's timely, like severely timely. So any way possible to help us make that easier so that we are properly closing people and providing that information, because I only work a few hours a day. So any way to like minimize that.
Yeah, of course. So anybody who wants custom reports, reach out to me individually. We're going to have to schedule meetings on an individual basis because everyone's needs are going to be a little different. And so I've done some of this work recently with Frontline on some of the youth stuff or the veteran stuff. So we've been doing this, but you just let me know. Just send me an email. Let's schedule some time to chat. I do basically do like an information gathering, right? And we'll talk about things that you need. Okay, I'm looking. Yep, go ahead, Ebony. I was just looking in the chat.
Oh, well, if you're about to look in it, then you're going to see the question from Robert at the end.
Okay, can we have two separate banners where no ROI is present and when an ROI from the COC is present, but your agency doesn't have one? Good question, Robbie. Yes, good questions, man. I don't know. That's a very it's like a system thing, right? That they put into every instance of Clarity. It's something to think about in terms of modification. I think that's a great idea. I will write it down. And we can try to push that forward as sort of a modification. Yeah, I will write all of your ideas down. Okay. So we got about 2 minutes left. Anybody have a last minute question?
When is this meeting scheduled again next?
Yeah, great question. Cool. So I'm going to do these quarterly. That's my goal. So we'll have the next one sometime in September. If you all have anything that you want to add to an agenda like this, please let me know, right? We'll throw it on the agenda. We'll talk about it, make time for it. We want to make this space very useful for you, informative, but you want to get all your answers to all the questions that we can give you, okay? So I'll send out another invite. It's always going to be like about an hour and a half. Unfortunately, I know not everyone's going to make every single one of them. It's okay, because like I said, we'll record these, okay? Okay. All right. Well, it is 12:30. Just about anyway. I want to thank you all again. Your work is incredible. I want you to know that. I know we didn't have much time to talk too much about. I want to show at some point the dashboard so you can see how all your data sort of comes together fully. I think that's going to be really important. But I just want you to know I truly, truly thank you all. I really appreciate everything you do. Your responsiveness to me when I send you a million emails. I know that it's annoying, but unfortunately, it's part of my job. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope that you all have a really good rest of your day and first day of summer.
All right, you too, Nick. Thanks so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, Nick.